Hello. Today I'm with John Oxley. John is a heavyweight in the UK leisure industry, working in the sector for over 30 years. John is centre forward at Brand Oxley, which we'll unpack a little bit later. John's recently left Places Leisure, where he worked for over 5 years as Chief Operating Officer. Places Leisure manage over 100 facilities across England, creating active, healthy people. Prior to that, John has been in a number of roles, including Managing Director of Active Nation, Group Operations Director, Sports and Leisure Management, plus John also had his own consultancy. John has recently set up an exciting group called Physical Activity, Sport, Shake and Shape to support the wellness movement, which we'll jump in and talk a little bit about later. So I'm really pleased to welcome John Oxley today. John, how are you going?
Yeah, good to see you, David. No, all good, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. And this is a first, John. This is the actual inaugural conversation with somebody from the UK leisure industry. So I'm really pumped about this.
Right, I better behave myself then.
Yeah, and I think usually when you speak to someone, from Australia or England, it's always, what's the weather like over there? So, yeah, what's the weather like?
It's wet and horrible.
It's wet and horrible.
Yeah, I shan't be going out on my bike today, that's for sure.
Oh dear, that's not good. So, John, we'll get straight into it, mate. What does well-being mean to you?
Well-being is being in good health, and I think in the physical activity side of the business, which I've sort of committed my whole life to, it's loving exercise and loving sport, just loving being active and moving about, and that's the well-being results of that type of life, I think are incredibly effective. They're great physically, they're great mentally, and they're great socially. They inhibit major chronic disease. It's a fantastic product, if you like. Why would anybody not want to get into that?
Yeah. And what are some of the strategies that you do when you're talking about the product and exercise? What are some examples that are strategies that you do to keep your well-being in check?
Well, I suppose from a business sense, I've always said, that actually over here in the UK, about 1 in 5 people are regularly active. It sounds appalling. Or 1 in 5 do the sort of minimum acceptable level of exercise according to the chief medical officer. So 4 in 5 people, 80% of the population, aren't physically active enough. And therefore, for those of us in the industry, we should be asking ourselves, when we're developing those types of strategies that you speak about, David, we should be asking ourselves, well, not what have we done to get 1 in 5 people active, but what should we be doing differently to get the other 80% of the population active? So it's not necessary to understand why people exercise. It's much more important to understand why people don't. And I think, you can only conclude that, we've become, as an industry, and I must be culpable as anybody, at being perfectly formed. We've got pricing absolutely right. We've got programming absolutely right. We've got marketing absolutely right for 20% of the population.
Yeah.
But it's not working for the majority of the population. So we need to understand, what is it about all of those things, those component parts that go into creating appeal, and that we've got to alter in order to because if you break the population down into sort of 20% segments, that first 20%, they'll be active whatever, it's the next 20% who are physically able but just don't. So what is it, what are the things that we can do to change their behaviors, and that's a huge amount of the population. And what we tend to do, certainly in the UK, we accept that we deal with the first 20%. That's easy. Then we jump to health intervention programs. Well, they're further on down the line. That's the 40 to 60% of the population. Well, the bit in the middle that we miss, where we can really accelerate participation and get a greater proportion of the population active, is that next 20%. You know, what is it that we've got to do to change their behavior? Because they are physically capable. There's nothing stopping them apart from something in their psyche. And you know, the sort of movement that I've started, you know, the shape shake debate group is really trying to explore those types of things. What have we got to do differently that we get to a point where physical activity is just a regular part of the nation's consciousness, that it's part of our DNA, it's how we grow up, we move about, we accept it, and what have you. And that would be a terrific thing to get to, but we're not there yet.
We're definitely not there yet. And I've been reading a lot of the conversations on that group, and you're certainly stimulating a lot of really good debate. Is there any insights there, any, you know, that are coming through in terms of what we can do to try and tackle these other, you know, the percentages that you talk about?
Well, I think they're, as with anything, David, they're on sort of multiple levels. You know, people have made observations about, you know, the obvious things, imagery that we use. People have made observations about that, equality, inclusion, those sorts of things are not in our consciousness. They're not the sort of, they're not there as a natural course. So that will create barriers. I think that the way that we understand the social side of activity is really important. I think the first 20% get an awful lot of benefit out of the physical results that activity delivers. My suspicion, because exercise is hard work, sometimes it's not a lot of not fun for, you know, so it is fun, you know, people like hurting themselves, you know, on the bike and what have you, but only a small proportion of them do. You know, it might be that we've got to change the approach in order that we lock on to more social aspects, making exercise more social for that next 20% of people, or more fun. We deliberately make it more fun. So I think we have to think about those types of things much more. And then it's also about how we as a nation organize ourselves. You know, we've become quite siloed, really. You know, and I think we sometimes get trapped into this. You know, we've been fairly successful at elite sport. You know, there's a big push in the there's no good hosting Olympic Games if you're going to come last, is there? So, you know, around that sort of period, there was massive attention given to elite sport, and there was a hope that would stimulate interest. And now, for some people it has. You know, that was a terrifically successful time back in 2012, but participation didn't ramp up. We didn't see a spike in that, and we've got to think about how we join up the landscape, the sport and physical activity landscape. And I think we've got to understand that our agencies have got a responsibility in that. I mean, I'll if I can talk about, you know, what's happened just recently around the last 6 months with the pandemic has been fascinating in terms of understanding just what status physical activity has got in the UK. Sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox now, but the when our Prime Minister refers to us as a sector, leisure, it's always prefaced with the word hospitality. So it's always hospitality and leisure will close on the 20th of March or whatever it was, and they'll reopen. Well, if we're being thrown in with hospitality, then as far as our central government is concerned, we're about as useful as a couple of pints on a Friday night. And that to me is appalling. And if that's the case, then we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we haven't done? What is it that we have done to get to a point where, at a time of ill health, why isn't physical activity, the deliverer of good health, being used as a beacon of sort of hope and direction and travel and what have you, in terms of overcoming the situation that we've got now, and it's not, and we have to ask ourselves as an industry, why is that, and we have to do something about it, because we'll never get to that point where physical activity and sport is ingrained in the nation's consciousness, while ever we fail to sort of argue our case, and the result being it's perceived by central government in the way that I've just described. So I feel quite passionate about it, and that's why I've started what I've started.
No, it comes through strong and clear how passionate you are, John. And when you're talking about 1 in 5 are meeting the guidelines, then something's not right to begin with. It's kind of broken anyway. And then you throw COVID into it, and watching and reading some of the articles around where we are, and you talk about language. It's so important, isn't it, to talk the language of government, and instead of leisure, is it well-being, and it's health. It's a health agenda, and I agree with you. We're in a health crisis, and to tackle COVID, you need to be healthy. So why isn't that used as a preventative measure? But if it's lumped in with pubs and cafes, then we're up against it.
That's right. I mean, this last weekend, David, obviously we've now got this 3-tier system, and thankfully we moved out of the hospitality and leisure category to gyms and leisure centres, which was good.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
But they can stay open. But it was as if the sector then becomes gyms. Well, the sector isn't
much more
just
than that.
just gyms. And again, the danger with that is if we're seeing you go from hospitality and then to gyms, again, the perception is that you're just a commercial commodity. Well, the impact that moving about and being active has on physical health, social health, mental health is enormous. The social value of physical activity is huge, but that clearly isn't understood. We're clearly not getting that message across, and so when our commentators refer to the gym industry, then that equally is damaging. It's not if we're truly to be seen as the sort of front line of the National Health Service, or the wellness service, if you will, then our language across the sector has to be consistent, and we have to appreciate that it's quite a broad church. If we're going to work, as I believe that we should, on an integrated basis with public health, then again we have to be prepared to change our language and listen a bit more and talk a bit less, I think.
And with it moving from tier 3 to tier 2, was that because I saw Andy Burnham's being quite prominent in a lot of the conversations, or stuff that I'm reading and things from Manchester, but obviously Liverpool was in tier 3, I think, and all gyms were closed. And look, national government had delegated the responsibility down to councils to make the decisions. So does that mean now then that all gyms can gyms and swimming pools and leisure centres, they can all still stay open? Is that the state of play?
They can. They negotiated. What should have happened was that the baseline didn't include gyms and leisure centres. It could, but that was down to a local negotiation. And I think, again, we've managed to argue ourselves out of it, but to a position where they can remain open. But again, I think that one of the things that we have done in the over here is that, which is why it was so painful in terms of the discussions with government, was that when we did go into lockdown back in March, we worked really, really hard on creating COVID secure environments so that when facilities were able to reopen, we understood how we needed to operate our swimming pools. We understood how we needed to operate our gyms and our studios and our sports, depending upon the requirements that the government and their medical advisors were providing, and so we as a sector, and certainly from my point of view at Places Leisure, we absolutely nailed it. The operational protocols, the organisation, the launch, the communication to customers, the safety message, the assurance that we gave to people, taking equipment out of use, ensuring that we maintain social distance, changing traffic flows within our facilities. We did really, really well, increased sanitizing regimes and what have you. And we created the environment that the government advisors asked us to. And whilst participation rates are obviously depressed because we've got reduced capacities, we've been monitoring the number of COVID cases that we come across, and the transmission rate that's within facilities, sport and physical activity facilities, is negligible.
I think I read that. I think I read it was something like 0.34.
That's right.
Per 100,000 visits, which equates to a third of a million or something, to one transmission. So then you add in your contract tracing and all that stuff. Like as an industry, like something to be proud of, isn't it? Like the fact that you've been able.
Exactly, and we did a really good job to create a COVID secure environment, and then we had the opportunity then for the government, having done that, to say, this is a really secure environment. You can it's really important to stay physically active, and there should have been then a promotional campaign that encouraged people to be physically active for the benefit of good health. And I think that we've missed that opportunity, unfortunately. And then consequently, when you get into these tier 3 things, going back to your point about language, David, it's not clear why are we wanting gyms and leisure centres to stay open because the transmission rate is low? Are we wanting them to stay open because because businesses will fail if they don't? Or are we wanting them to stay open because actually physical activity is a really good thing and it's good for your health? And actually it should be the third, but we've been quite confused as to how that narrative has played out. So that's something else that I think that we need to learn from.
When you're talking now, I'm just thinking how impactful it would have been if there was a national, physical activity campaign. How powerful that would have been. And I'm still thinking, if they did that now, I know we've probably not been as effective in all this as we could have been, and you've had, the sector's had to fight to get to where it is and be open on tier 2. But if there was a national campaign, and the centre.
And there was an opportunity, because right at the front end of the lockdown in the summer, the chief medical officer came out with a bit of a pearly statement
Yeah.
That said, there is no time or place where physical activity isn't a good thing. Well, that was just fantastic, and then we should have seized on that. Looking outside at the weather now, it's not quite, because people did get out on the bikes and they walked and they ran and what have you during lockdown. And I think that's why I think it's important that facilities stay open now, because it's less easy to encourage people to get out on the bikes. Now we're coming up towards the winter.
I remember those cold winters.
Well, they're not cold anymore. They're just wet and horrible.
Yeah, it's what I hear. Well, you're talking about some of those facilities, John, and councils are carrying a huge debt, and some of that's not being met by government and facilities. The reduced income that you talked about, there's no bailouts, huge job losses. I think a couple of weeks ago there was a Telegraph article where it quoted 10,000 job losses already, and could reach up to like 300,000 for the sector.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a realization that repairs no longer an option, and something like fundamentally has to change? You've talked a little bit about the sector, where the sector you think is going in terms of that wellness and health agenda, but do you think some of the leisure contracts will be changed in terms of their structures? Like where do you see the industry going?
Yeah, I think they will have to. I think that we have to accept that in the UK, the only reason leisure centres, and I guess the same in Oz, the only reason that leisure centres remain open is because they're being supported by local government, and the contractual arrangements that were in existence before COVID are no longer relevant. Capacities are reduced. Income is obviously reduced. There's a requirement on operators to mitigate costs, but the difference between income and expenditure is being filled by local authority support.
Yeah.
So facilities are being propped up by local government, but those agreements are really only in place until next March. The local government is on its knees financially because it's got lots of other things to deal with, public health issues, social care, homelessness. All of those things are having to be dealt with and are more acute now than they've ever been. And so the ability for local authorities to continue to maintain the level of financial support that they're providing at the moment is just I don't think is an option. So I think that certainly there are job losses now. Most of the major operators that I've spoken to, they'll end up with workforces. They'll probably take about 30% of the workforce out. That's happening. That's happening now. Because
so when you say that, is that just to become more efficient in their operations, 30%?
Because they just don't need them, because certain facility, there's, we've got limited capacities in gyms. We don't need as many fitness instructors. We've got limited capacity in our pools. We don't need as many lifeguards. Everything is now online. We can't bring back some of the things like climbing walls, soft play areas, those types of things. The cleaning regimes that would be required to sanitize, it would be uneconomic to do so. There is no indoor. You're not allowed adult indoor team sport of more than 6 people is not permissible. So you've got a really reduced amount of activity going on, and therefore you don't need the workforce that you once had. And for the businesses to survive on reduced levels of income, human resources the largest cost, and therefore economically to survive, it's got to be taken out. What the future looks like is, and I think this is where things have to change, and that's why we have to have a broader national debate, there is an opportunity to think differently, to ask ourselves questions. What is the role of public sector leisure in the future? How do we use the assets that we've got? How do we consider the amount of assets? Because of course, if you've got reduced participation with the same supply, you've got too many facilities now, and there are already some uneconomic facilities. So we've got to take some harsh decisions, I think, around the amount of supply in the sector. We've got to, rationalize for efficiency's sake, and we've got to, repurpose, reimagine, what the service is all about. And I think that's got to be done in partnership with local authorities. There's got to be a real sort of collaborative approach to this, so that we can come up with solutions that everybody believes in, and that we can have a real impact upon the health of a greater proportion of communities. I don't know what the answers are, but I think I might have told you one of my favorite sayings is, you don't have to know all the answers, but you've just got to be asking the right questions. And I think that's what we've got to do.
The answers will come. And I think that them questions that you talk about, in terms of fits into the group that you've kind of formed. So the physical activity, sport and shape group. So can you just tell me a bit about that background and what your aspirations are for that?
There were times during the summer where things that I've referred to, were occurring, and they were starting to really wind me up. And I think the important thing that to remember is that what COVID hasn't caused the issues that we've got in terms of physical activity. It's just exposed some of the issues that have been there for 10 years, but have been hidden. And the more conversations I was having with people across the sector, the more, consistency, or alignment in the sort of beliefs that one or two of us had, I was coming across. And so I think there was an incident in July where we were told we were going to open, and then we didn't, and that was the sort of start of this sort of hospitality and leisure thing, and pubs were able to reopen, and
what a message to send out
on the 4th of July, and leisure centres and pools and gyms were able to open on the 25th of July, and that to me made a really horrendous statement about the value that was being placed on the stuff that I've committed sort of my career to. So that was the first thing. And then there was something else then that sort of happened, towards the end of August, another opportunity missed. And I just took to sort of Twitter and LinkedIn, and I finished the sort of sentence with "Who's with me?" Well, I mean, it got about 12,500 views in about 12 hours. And, people were saying yes. And so the support was overwhelming. And since then, and really what I've been trying to say is, we can't have a situation again where, the status and the contribution that those in the sector know that we can make to people's lives and communities' lives is perceived to be of so little value to those that are making, quite serious decisions about things. So I set about, I knew that there was support out there because people were saying, yeah, you bang on. Right, John. So I thought, well, blimey, what have I started now? You can't start and then not carry it through, can you?
Yeah.
So I just started piecing things together, and the number of people got in contact, and I've had conversations with since have been brilliant. And I was certain that there's a phrase over here, I'm sure it's probably the same over there. We tend to be male, pale, and stale is a phrase that's used, and that sort of refers to the fact that too many decision makers are white middle class blokes, and that's got to be one of the inhibitors to us making progress. We've got to canvass much broader and more diverse opinion. So that's been brilliant to sort of stimulate that. And I suppose the purpose then was to really say, look, this is what we've got now. So my intention is to get a charter and a vision drafted, which I'm doing with we started to loosely form a little sort of group from the wider that wider LinkedIn community. We're checking that we're aligned. We think we've got a vehicle that we can use to really get us in front of the key agencies: Sport England, UK Active, SimSpa, Sport and Rec Alliance, all of those things that all do their own bit, but we need to get them to coalesce around a common framework. Otherwise, they continue to go down their own independent path, and that's one of the things that's damaging us, I think, as a sector. So if we can be independent and authentic and say this is what some smart people think, and hold those agencies their feet to the fire and say, can you coalesce around this? And it looks like we're starting to put that together. I think we'll get all of those organizations around one table very soon, and if we manage to do that, I'll be chuffed a bit, because that will be a start, and we'll we'll have made a bit of a difference, or we'll have made a start. We'll be at the start of the beginning, I suppose, is what I would say.
Yeah,
but at least we'll be there.
Yeah, I think as Gandhi says, be the change you want to see. So I think it's very admirable putting it out there, which it's brave, and showing vulnerability as well. I'm sure when after you put it out, you think, what have I done? And then you're getting all these comments and stuff. So I would imagine it's a bit of a roller coaster, but it's a real systems approach which you're taking, isn't it? Because you're talking about all these different perspectives, and it's bringing them around the table, and not having people who look the same or talk the same. This what you talk about with white middle class men. It's we need that diversity in there to get these different perspectives. But
we do, and we have to reach across. We have to open our ears to other things if we genuinely want to be a wellness movement and improve health through physical activity, sport and physical activity. Then I had a conversation with the UK Active yesterday. Actually, they're doing some consultation around for the public sector, because they're only asking their members, and which I'm thinking, well, it's all very well, but you're going to get it. What you're going to get is a narrow lens of an opinion. And if we truly want to break things, we've got to, you've also got to ask those same questions to chief executives of local authorities. You've got to ask those same questions to directors of public health within local authorities. You've got to go and speak to headmasters of schools, because they play a role in good health within a community. And so that, as you say, that systems approach, if we can reach out and start to join up and canvas views, opinion, look to collaboratively work on stuff on a sort of broader base, then I think we stand a chance of getting a better solution.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely optimistic with it, but I think that consultation and the listening takes time, and that's where we need to get out to all these groups and make sure people are heard and join the dots, like you say. And in terms of chronic conditions, so I've done my research here, so correct me if I'm wrong, John, but about 15 million people in the UK have a chronic condition, and that's out of around 66 million. But if you could nudge one part of the system to improve the well-being of the population, what would you do?
Golly, one part of the system.
It's like a genie, and you just get one choice.
Just get one go. Well, I always want more than I can have. Yeah, I mean, good question. Difficult to say. I actually think that we underestimate the power of the voluntary sector. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we could somehow join that bit up, I think that it would be that more than anything could probably stimulate participation far more than leisure centres and swimming pools and gyms. I'll give you an example. I live in a little village in Worcestershire. There are 1,500 people live here.
How many pubs?
2 pubs, of course. There was 20 years ago, there was just a senior football club, and it had a first team and a Sunday team.
Yeah.
And there was nothing in the village for kids. So we started something off, and had got a dozen kids coming up to play football of various ages and shapes and sizes, up to the field on a Saturday morning. The following year, we were able to field 2 teams in a local junior league. The year after that, it was 3. The year after that, it was 6, and very quickly it became 20. 4 adult teams. So we've got a village of 1,500 people. We did things properly because we got a few people of like minds who wanted to make a difference and make something in the community for the community. And we've now got 4 adult teams, 20 kids teams. Yeah, not everybody. Obviously, people are coming into the village now to play football, but we've managed to improve grants from the Football Foundation of over £150,000 to build new pitches because we've got demand.
You must be charter standard status then, but it must be community status.
We were community charter standard club of the year many years running, actually. So as a consequence of, and that's all done voluntarily. Yeah. A bit of effort from people who are passionate about doing something, and we've got and we've branched out, and we've got girls football, and we've got a women's team now. We've branched out, and there's cricket within this. So instead of it being Inkborough Football Club, it's now Sporting Club Inkborough, and there's a cricket team, and there's junior cricket being played. There's netball being played for the girls, and what have you. Mm. So consequently, we've in a small village, we've got probably 350 people active at least twice a week, because they're training and they're playing. Mm-hmm. And that's all done voluntarily. And we've got investment into the village and what have you. And I think if we thought as a sector about the power of those types of things and joined it up a little bit more and started forming links and what have you, then you could really make a difference to the nation's levels of physical activity.
Yeah, and what's coming up for me there is the community and giving people a purpose as well. You talked about your well-being at the beginning, John, but purpose is such an important
Yeah.
thing for people. It gives them confidence as well, something to do, and then it builds up that social capital, where everybody's kind of helping each other, and it's they say it takes a village type of thing. But that's a really good example. How that's expanded and scaled, or replicated in the industry is, I'm not quite sure how
Yeah, no. But it is, you're right to say, David, it is about purpose, and of course, our purpose was that we just said, we approached it in the way that you I think you should do most things. It wasn't just about having a football team. It was about being inclusive. So we had some set of principles that said we don't turn anybody away. So if we end up with 15 kids at under 12, we'll have 2 7-a-side teams instead of just one. So we don't turn anybody away. It doesn't matter how. And we had principles like, if you get selected, you're guaranteed to play a minimum of a quarter of a game. So we've got nobody sitting on the side.
Oh, brilliant! So because you had so many people, you would always give somebody so they wouldn't always just be sub and not get a game.
No, absolutely. No,
yeah, that's fantastic.
So if you apply those types of principles, the effect that it has is just
huge.
Fantastic. Well, and of course, what that creates is, from the social point of view, parents get involved. They're supportive, and things sort of grow as a consequence. And you realize that you end up, providing a social occasion for people, when they're coming to watch the kids training, because they're coming out and having a chat with each other and what have you. And that's good. So it was really, we wanted to have a positive impact on the community through football. It wasn't just good enough just to play football. That's the point.
Yeah, and that vehicle could be football, it could be any sport, couldn't it?
Correct.
It's but that's one of the things why I respect you so much, John, because you're there, delivering and creating stuff on the ground at grassroots level, and then obviously, you just finished your role at Chief Operating Officer, Places Leisure, and it's at that strategic level as well. And there's a lot in between that. So, and that leads me to my last question in terms of you personally. So, you've talked a bit about your history and things, and what you're looking to do with the new group, etc. But if you just think about you personally, how do you want to contribute and influence the system?
Well, I think now, having been in having done what I've done for all my working life, I've sort of got to the point where, I actually care about the sector, and I care about the topic more than I care about the organisation I might happen to work for, because I think it's really, that's the thing that that I think can do so much good. And I like people, and if I can therefore have an effect upon not just improving the organisation that I happen to work for, but improve the way in which the sector has grown, enhanced its status, enhanced its appreciation and understanding across communities, then that will give me a sense of pride. And if I can influence people to share those beliefs and inspire them to contribute, to bring the best out of themselves along the way, then I'll perhaps think I've done a half decent job. Yeah, that's how I think about. I'm getting on now.
Get over
it. So over 30 years in the sector is quite a long time, and but I'm just as passionate about, I love going out and riding on my bike. I've got back involved in managing one of the football teams on a Saturday, and to be honest, I just want to play rather than coach. but I know I can't. And,
surely there's an over 40s team, isn't there?
Well, there might soon be. Yeah.
If you've got anything to do with it.
Yeah.
That was really cool, John. I really enjoyed our chat and listening to things. Obviously, it's a bit sad how the state of play over there at the moment, but obviously, there's some great people in the industry to keep pushing things on. And
it's like anything; it's got to be seen as an opportunity, hasn't it? It is. It's a tough old time, but you've got to apply your mind and say, okay, well, everybody has to get out of bed in the morning and say, how can I be better than I was yesterday? That's how things improve, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a mindset, but everybody doesn't look at it like that. Glass half full, or glass half empty. So, well, listen, just keep doing what you're doing, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the year. But before we finish, is there anything you want to add or ask?
No, I mean, I think it's been, well, I'm really grateful for the opportunity, David, and it's brilliant to have that connection. I'm always interested in how things are being tackled across across the world, and particularly from your own point of view, how whether similar approaches prevail in Australia, and if there are things that we can learn in terms of the approach that's being taken over there, or are there things that you can learn from maybe some of the stuff that I've said. We can now communicate in real time, 12,000 miles away. So if anybody over there needs any help, then I'm available to do so.
Absolutely, and I'll drop your details in the comment section when I put this out. So what I think of you, John. So I respect you a lot and really appreciate your time, and I hope to see you soon.
It's really good to see what you've done and what you've started over there, David. Credit to you to get things off the ground in the way that you've done, and I wish you every success with it.
Yeah, appreciate that, and hopefully I'll get to see you in person soon, when maybe in the next 12 months or so.
When we're allowed to travel.
That's it. All right, John, you look after yourself, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, David. All the best.
Have a great day. Bye, mate.